With the release of The Force Awakens fast approaching, it's pretty impossible to not, on some level, be in kind of a Star Wars mood these days. And that's pretty understandable, even for a guy like me who's pretty meh over, Force Awakens. I'm still, getting in that mood where I just want to consume a lot of Star Wars related stuff. And I basically decided to finally read through a book that I got like a long, long time ago called Star Wars Labyrinth of Evil, and now I'm here today to give you guys my thoughts on it. Now, Labyrinth of Evil was released back in early 2015. It basically serves as a kind of prologue to Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, and it is part of the Dark Lord trilogy. Now, we used to be a fan term for 3 books: Labyrinth of Evil, the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, and The Rise of Darth Vader. And these 3 books basically serve as a sort of transitionary storyline to show you the last days of Anakin Skywalker as Anakin Skywalker, and then his transition to Darth Vader, and him basically reinventing his personality and fighting skills as Vader in the final installment of the trilogy. And this used to be a fan term, as I said before, but it became so widely used, and those 3 books have become so beloved that it basically became an official terminology. Now, all 3 of these books are in Legends continuity, except the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, which may or may not be. I'm not really sure where the novels stand. The novelizations of the movies stand with the whole canonicity thing, but Rise of Darth Vader and this are now part of the official Legends continuity. They are not technically canon, but I'm going to get to that later on. And it's written by James Luceno, and he's a writer of the Star Wars material who's kind of become known for his good character piece books that focus on kind of the inner workings of a single character and their perspective on the whole Star Wars universe. He, of course, Labyrinth of Evil doesn't necessarily fit that bill. It's more about, of course, it's about Anakin Skywalker a lot of the time, but then you have viewpoints from other characters, and then you have Rise of Darth Vader, which is predominantly from Anakin's perspective, and then you have Plagueis, which is about Darth Sidious's master, and then finally he released a recent Tarkin novel, which was, I believe, the first novel of the canon expanded universe. So yeah, he's become a pretty prolific writer. He's become very famous. Darth Plagueis is an excellent book, and this is excellent too, which makes me very excited to check out The Rise of Darth Vader. And as I said before, this basically serves as sort of prologue for the Revenge of the Sith movie. And this book really serves to highlight the various flaws of the Jedi Order and why they fell. Now, I used to be one of those guys who really hated the old Jedi Order because I just thought they were stupid for not noticing the Sith being right under their noses, and because they basically weren't omniscient guys who could see everything from the viewer's perspective of the real world. But this book really does serve a good point. It does really serve as a good way of seeing why exactly the Jedi think the way they do, and why their methodology really fails. Now, a lot of what I'm about to say kind of depends on the Old Republic material, which serves to infer their mentality here. But I think that even without that stuff, the book does a good job of telling you why the Jedi fail. And the reason is that the Jedi failed to change and adapt. Now, throughout the history of the Jedi and the Sith Wars, the many wars they fought over the thousands and thousands of years, the Sith always came at the Jedi with brute force. Now, of course, they did use deception and cunning and infiltration, but those things always served as a secondary means to the primary means, and that was smash the Jedi, smash, 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 until there are no more Jedi. And this never worked for the Sith, and they just kept trying it over and over and over again. And the Jedi's whole system of, we're going to be ready to stop your smashing, 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 has always worked for the Jedi, always. Like, even if some Sith infiltration did yield some results for the Sith, they always had this type of mentality of, we're going to destroy the Jedi by any means necessary. And any means necessary basically means just throwing everything we've got at them until they're gone. And because of this whole mentality that the Sith employed and the Jedi employed to fight theirs, the Jedi have always, and still do at this point in the storyline, perceive the Sith as nothing more than guys who are just waiting to smash, smash, smash shit. And this predominantly is the fault of Yoda, because Yoda has been around for almost 1,000 years at this point. And when you're 1,000 years old, you get really, really stuck in your own ways. You kind of can't really adapt anymore, which is normal even for older people in the real world. You just aren't as open to changes and adapting to new stuff and trying out new stuff as you were when you were young. And Yoda's whole insistence on leaning on this old mentality and thinking of the Sith in this old way is what ultimately costs him his position as the Master of the Jedi Order, and gets a lot of his friends, people he's known since they were children, get horribly murdered later on during Order 66. Because Yoda cannot simply grasp the concept that the Sith have infiltrated the Senate. He cannot grasp the concept that the Sith have changed, that they have evolved, that they've learned from their numerous mistakes of the past. He still thinks that this whole thing with Count Dooku is just a ploy, that he's still waiting for the big Sith armada to come in, and so that they can fight. He cannot grasp the concept of the Sith learning from their mistakes and saying, look, we're not going to smash anymore. We're going to get in there. We're going to get power from inside the Republic itself, and then we're going to dismantle everything from the inside out. And the Jedi are so set in their ways in this that Sidious is able to completely fool them just by saying the truth. Like in Episode 2, Count Dooku pretty much tells them Darth Sidious is in the Senate, which he is. He's Palpatine. He is the Supreme Chancellor. He's, the head honcho de facto leader of the Republic's Senate. And the Jedi can't believe this. Like, the Jedi are just so insistent that the Sith must be like this that they just completely overlook this until it's far, far too late. And this even goes farther thanks to the new Clone Wars animated series, where they learned that Tyrannos was Count Dooku, and they know that Count Dooku made the clones. But the Jedi aren't like, maybe we're playing into the hands of the Sith here. No, they're like, oh good, like we got Count Dooku's other army before him, so the Sith can't smash us again. And all these factors, along with the way Sidious manipulates and deceives them just by telling them the truth, really just shows to show you just how stuck in their old ways the Jedi got, how they haven't really evolved, and how easily manipulated they have become. And there's this whole investigation into the whole Sidious being in the Senate matter. The Jedi finally start entertaining the idea once they get some new information, and Sidious still keeps screwing with him. He still keeps giving them the truth, basically, letting them find the truth, but they keep misinterpreting the truth because they can't see behind their own tunnel vision. And that's really interesting, and that really serves to give the book its title, Labyrinth of Evil. It is a labyrinth constructed by evil people using evil means and deceit and manipulation to basically screw over the good guys. And the whole war is basically that. It's just this whole intricate web of lies, deception, and annihilation, all under the control of a single man, right under the noses of the Jedi. And this kind of serves as a good jumping off point to my next to the next section, I suppose, and that's concerning Anakin Skywalker. And the Anakin we see in this is already an Anakin who's really burned out by the war. He's really sick and tired of this shit. He just wants to go home and enjoy some peace. And this is kind of different from the Anakin that we see in the new Clone Wars animated series, who's very well adjusted to the war. He's kind of not really bothered by it that much, and he's more or less matured by the time we see him in the animated series. However, in the old Legends continuity, the one that infers this book, Anakin does not become a Jedi Knight until the war's almost over. Like a few months before Revenge of the Sith, he becomes a Jedi Knight. And the entire war is more or less Anakin's trial by fire. It's him going on all these missions, suffering all these injuries, seeing all these friends die and suffer all around him that really changes him. And the whole idea that the old Clone Wars projects dealt with was that Anakin's youth, his sort of enthusiasm that he had before, that's all just been annihilated by the Clone Wars, and by the end of the war, he's just this tired, kind of old guy who just who just wants to see this fucking war done so he can be with his wife and enjoy himself finally and just rest. And that's the Anakin we see here, an Anakin who's so sick and tired of the war that he's basically kind of losing more and more control of himself. He's trying to keep it together. But once again, we're presented with the idea that the Jedi have failed to evolve and to adapt in the way that Anakin tries to deal with his own issues through Obi-Wan. The problem with the relationship, like the EU and, of course, the new animated series, The Clone Wars, they did a good job of showing why these guys were friends when their relationship worked, when they didn't have their own internal problems to deal with to create friction between them. Like when these guys were at their own individual best, they worked best together and they were great friends. But in this book, we have Anakin, who is, like I said, really tired of this shit. He just wants to end the war by any means necessary. His youth has been more or less taken from him, and he just wants to stop the bloodshed and misery no matter what, which ultimately serves as kind of his gateway into the dark side, which makes sense because this is the prologue to Revenge of the Sith. Now, as I was saying, Anakin, the way Anakin tries to deal with his problems serves as a great point to show why the Jedi are flawed and why his relationship with Palpatine makes sense. Anakin, whenever he has a problem, he never feels like he can talk to Yoda or Obi-Wan in the way you can talk to a normal person. Because every time he tries to talk to Yoda or Obi-Wan about his problems, they always give him some sort of bullshit spiel about the Force wills this, or the Force wills that, or the Jedi Code forbids this. And just imagine spending your entire adolescence and young adulthood in that kind of environment where you just can't talk to anybody about your problems like a normal fucking human being, which isn't a problem for the other Jedi because these guys have been here since they were born. Like, they think this way, and so them getting these kind of bullshit lecture spiels makes sense to them as dealing with your own issues. But for Anakin, who was born in a normal house where you can just tell your mom, you know, Mom, I got this problem, can you help me out? It's really fucking him up because he has spent his entire adolescence and young adulthood feeling like he's being lectured to. Like, he can't just ask Obi-Wan, like, how am I going to apply for my job? You know, can you help me out? And Obi-Wan's just going to give him some bullshit spiel. And it always makes him feel like he's being lectured to. He feels like this stupid kid being lectured by a scorned parent or whatever, and it makes him feel like an idiot. It makes him feel like everybody else keeps looking down on him. It makes him feel insecure. It makes him feel angry. And it makes sense because just imagine living like that where you can't ask your mentor, your best friend, the guy who's essentially one of your father figures for advice because you know he's just going to give you some stupid bullshit that makes sense for him but doesn't really help you at all because you think like a normal person. And this is where his relationship with Palpatine really works and why Palpatine's claws sinking deeper and deeper into Anakin over the years have made sense. Anakin is that guy he can have a normal conversation with. Anakin is the guy he can ask about things that he just couldn't really have a normal conversation with Obi-Wan or even Padme, because you know how it is. You know, there are just some things you can talk about with your best friend that you can't talk about your family, your girlfriend, or your wife. In this case, things that you just want to share with someone and just get some advice with. And Palpatine always presented himself as that guy for Anakin, the guy he can confide in even his darkest, most personal secrets to. And this always created an interesting parallel to their relationship later on, where when Anakin was this young and full of potential and very promising apprentice for Sidious, he was always supportive of him. He always, you know, fed his ego, always helped him out wherever he could. And then later on, where Vader becomes this highly efficient, very powerful, but not as powerful as Sidious wanted him to be type of guy, a type of apprentice, I should say, Sidious basically takes any and every opportunity to get rid of him because he doesn't want scarred and broken Darth Vader, despite his obvious technical and personality-wise improvements over Anakin Skywalker. He wanted the young, brash, you know, full of potential, maximum potential, I should say, Anakin that was basically robbed of him during the duel on Mustafar. And it kind of always made me feel a little bit sorry for Vader that the people who genuinely did love him and did genuinely want to help and support him, but he couldn't think of them in that light. He really couldn't confide in them the way he wanted to. He ended up betraying or killing them all. And then the one person who did pretend to be his honest-to-God friend and later just treats him as shit. He treats him as an expendable tool and constantly finds new ways to test him or to try and get rid of him, even in the new expanded universe. Which brings me up to the next point, and that's the Separatists. One good parallel that's drawn between the Separatists and the forces of the Republic is that while the forces of the Republic are fucked, and we know they're fucked because they have to be fucked for the original trilogy to happen, they all cooperate with one another more or less. Even Anakin, when he's dealing with his own personal issues, he's still working for the interest of the Republic and of the Jedi. And the Separatists are basically these people who all hate and despise each other, whether it's openly or whether it's in a more private manner, who end up winning the war, because Count Dooku hates basically everybody but Sidious. He hates Grievous because he's a xenophobe. He is all about humanity first. Like, he is so focused on human purity that he also hates Anakin Skywalker because the kid got an android arm to replace his old one. He even says that Anakin should have just learned how to duel with one hand like a proper master instead of defile his pure human body like that, which does add a lot of subtext whenever you see when you see Count Dooku interact with non-humans. Grievous hates Newt Gunray, who is, of course, the leader of the Trade Federation. Like, the two of them just hate each other's guts. Newt Gunray views Grievous as this glorified droid who just has a couple of organic bits and pieces in him, and Grievous hates Newt Gunray because his species, the Nemoidians, are always cowardly. They're always about getting profit and shit, but when it comes to actually doing anything for themselves, they're fucking worthless. And Grievous, a proud warrior in this version, really, really hates that. We also get to see more insight into Grievous as well. We get his entire backstory, more or less, which makes him both sympathetic and makes his motivations for hating the Jedi very, very understandable. And the Grievous you see here is not like in Revenge of the Sith. It's not like in the new Clone Wars show where he's basically this mustache-twirling coward who runs away the instant things don't go the way he wants them to. No, he is determined, he is driven, he is smart, he is terrifying, and this is more or less the Grievous that should have been used for all the preceding material, but unfortunately it was not meant to be so. But like I said, you have this entire other side, the Confederacy, fighting the Republic, and they all either openly or privately hate and despise one another, and they succeed in the end, even though none of them actually live to see the fruits of their success. They still win in the end. Why? Because of Darth Sidious's Labyrinth of Evil, because he is able to use his vast machinations and connections and scheming to secure victory for himself and for the Sith. And that is, like I said, the entire point of the book at the end of the day, to showcase why certain things are happening in this universe the way they are, and it makes a really good point in favor of the prequels to explain why the Jedi fell, why Anakin couldn't really confide in Obi-Wan, why Palpatine's machinations ultimately succeeded at the end, why was all this planning and plotting really, really necessary. It really does serve as a good way to show you why the prequels ultimately did work, at least on this kind of level. And it's not to say that the book just exists to hammer on these ideas and themes. It's actually a pretty fun kind of investigative storyline. You got Obi-Wan and Anakin disguising as prisoners on a barge to find a guy who can lead them down a trail that they're following to track down Sidious. You got Mace Windu going into the undergrounds of Coruscant with a whole bunch of clones and doing his own investigation. You got the future leaders of the rebellion trying to stop Palpatine from getting more and more power, voicing their concerns to Palpatine, because during the war, Palpatine should have left the position of Supreme Chancellor a long, long time ago. But because the war was starting up by the time his mandate was over, he was basically given emergency powers that have let him stay in the position of the Chancellor more and more and more. And now that the war is reaching its climax, the people who aren't completely brainwashed by him, like the Jedi and the future leaders of the rebellion, and of course Padme Amidala, are trying to bring things back to normal. And that, of course, isn't going to work. And there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of really good banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin. The funniest scene is easily on Cato Nemoidia, where Obi-Wan is trying to save his clone squad. He's like deflecting blaster bolts from all over the fucking place. But then there's this poisonous gas leaking in that's making him feel drunk and woozy. And so you just have this scene where Anakin's like rushing in to save his master, and then he just finds like a shitload of droids murdered by drunk-style Obi-Wan using like drunk Cerisi or something, and just murdering them all. And it's hilarious. It's great. The character's reaction to it is great. The way it's described is really, really funny. And despite the book overall being predominantly dark and predominantly taking itself seriously, it is still manages to have a lot of good banter, a lot of good lighthearted moments to break it up. It's not just grim darkness over and over and over again. Now, there is one thing I should mention, and that's in the original Clone Wars series, you know, the one from 2003, the way we see Palpatine get abducted and Coruscant get attacked is a lot different there than it is here. Here, Mace Windu is a lot more involved with saving Palpatine from Grievous. The same Jedi who fight Grievous in the show aren't in here necessarily. The whole chase scene between Grievous and, you know, the Jedi escorting Palpatine to safety is a lot different here as well. A scene that's missing for whatever reason is that Mace Windu doesn't crush Grievous's chest piece in this, and that serves to explain why Grievous has the cough in Revenge of the Sith. Like, that's not in here. That was in the show, but that's not in here. And it's really weird because this is supposed to be like the more official version of the prologue to Revenge of the Sith. So what the fuck? So, and then it also gets kind of problematic because the show also had this subplot of Obi-Wan and Anakin being at a completely different battlefield for months on end, and then going on a completely different journey than the one they are here. And that journey in the show also leads them to going back to Coruscant. Now, the group that used to control the Legends continuity basically said, oh, that whole other adventure, that happened after this. But the way this book ends, that's really, really not possible at all. So, yeah, if you're one of those guys who really knows the old Clone Wars show inside and out, and you're watching this, you're going to be really weirded out by the fact that this pretty blatantly contradicts that. So, yeah, that's kind of a big continuity snarl for when the Coruscant battle happens. But overall, I gotta say, this is a fantastic book. I think that James Luceno, while he's very good at individual character stories, I feel like this more standard version where he's focusing on multiple characters is a lot better for world-building purposes. It serves to build a bigger sort of theme and idea for across the entire universe instead of just for one character. And I still feel like this whole approach with dealing with multiple characters still yields very positive results when it comes to fleshing out why do they do the things that they do and how do they feel about the circumstances they find themselves in. So, yeah, this is a fantastic book. It's a great prologue to the Revenge of the Sith novelization, even to the film if you want to view it as that. If you're someone who knows the Clone Wars stuff, you know, the TV shows, this isn't really the same thing. This is from an old bygone era, sort of, that existed before Ahsoka Tano, before Rebels, before Disney. So get all that newer stuff out of your head and just consider the movies and maybe some of the novels you read before this one, and you'll have a blast. But if you're someone who kind of has a problem distancing yourself from that stuff, the way the characters are written here is going to seem a little weird and sort of contradictory to the way they were presented after this was published. But yeah, Labyrinth of Evil by James Luceno, a fantastic book for the fans of the expanded universe, and a pretty good way of expanding, you know, the mythology and the themes of the prequel trilogy. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.